Good morning. My name is George Tanabe. I used to teach in the Department of Religion at the University of Hawaii. My field is Japanese religion with a specialty on Buddhism. I retired in 2006 along with my wife Willa, who also taught at the University of Hawaii in the Department of Art and Art History. And her field is also Japanese Buddhist art. And so we combined our two backgrounds, academic backgrounds, together, and did something that we've had always wanted to do for a long time, and that was to write a book about the Japanese Buddhist temples that are here in our own backyard in the state of Hawaii. My family belongs to a Buddhist temple here in Waialua, where we live, the Waialua Honganji, and also patronize the 3 other Buddhist temples that are out here on the North Shore. So I grew up with being involved with or participating in the different events that the temples would have, and then went off to graduate school to study Japanese Buddhism. And then again, Willa's field is also Japanese Buddhist art history. So in terms of my personal life and my professional life, I've been involved with studying and trying to understand Buddhism. I think since most of the occasions at which we would go to the temple, and I think this is true for most people, was for funerals and for memorial services, there was always a kind of a sad association going to a temple and listening to the chanting, listening to the rituals and the services being performed. Always reminded me of a sad occasion and of death in the family. And I think this is true for most families as far as services are concerned. But of course, Buddhism is also a religion for life, for living. And as a student of Buddhism, I was able to understand that other side, that it's a Buddhism for living as well as for dying. And so I got a broader understanding of Buddhism through my study, as opposed to my exposure when I was growing up and having it be a family religion, usually associated with death and memorial services. Most people who go to a Japanese Buddhist temple, whether they are lifelong members or whether they are first-time visitors, walk into a temple and see a lot of ornate decoration, filled with gold, colored with gold, and decorated with lacquer, and it's just kind of a blur, to all of them. There's just so much there. It's so rich. It's kind of an overpowering experience, sensory experience of seeing so much up there. And the irony is, of course, you see so much up there and you don't see anything because there's just too much, and so the details get missed. And we wanted to write a book that will allow people to walk into a temple and look very carefully at all of the details, all of the different objects that are there, and to understand what each object was and what they meant. Because temples are filled with teachings and stories that are embedded in the objects. And so it's a material culture, it's a religious culture that is embedded in material objects. And so it's a matter of learning how to read objects, to see and understand the meaning of what they are seeing, and to be able to take apart this blur of gold and lacquer and break it down into the details, and to extract from each detail a story or a meaning that is embedded in that object. So that was our primary purpose, was to explain the interior of temples. The other reason was to document what temples remain in Hawaii. There are 90 remaining temples in the state, and we visited all of them. It took us 3 years to visit them, but it was really a really enjoyable pilgrimage of sorts to visit all of the temples. And this is important because many of the temples are in decline and are dying even as we speak, and therefore to document the temples that exist now was important for the historical record, because in 5, 10, 15 years from now the number will be considerably less, and so we would at least have a written and a photographic document of the temples that exist. I think one of the most interesting objects that people see or look at without seeing, perhaps, and all the time they go, because it's in perfectly plain sight. It's on the front of the front altar table of many temples, and on the front there are carvings of birds of the Pure Land, which is the Buddhist equivalent of heaven. Of the many birds that are depicted on the front altar table, there is one bird with two heads. And the story is, and this is written in the sutras or the Buddhist scriptures, the story is that one head was eating all of the sweet berries and the second head became jealous, and so it said, "I'll fix you," and fed the first head a poison berry. And of course the poison berry killed the first head, but it also killed the entire bird, which included the second head, and so both heads died because they were not able to get along with each other, because one head was jealous and took revenge on the other. So I think the moral of the story is fairly clear. We are all different, but we are joined into one body, and if we have issues with each other, we need to work them out rather than to take revenge or try to do away with the other side. In connection with the book, we Willa and I organized an exhibition of temple art and furnishings, which is at the community gallery at the Japanese Cultural Center of Hawaii in Honolulu. The exhibition opened on December 1st and will run to February 22nd of this year, 2013. And it is a rather remarkable collection of objects that we borrowed from local temples who were extremely generous in letting us take some of their treasured objects and to put them on display at the Japanese Cultural Center. So this is an example of the kind of objects that you'll be able to see close up, and normally it will be up on the altar, and in fact in this case way in the back and off to one side. Right now we have the pleasure of being able to see it up close. So that's one way of getting into some of the objects that we're talking about in the book. And the other way is to take a temple tour that has been organized by the Japanese Cultural Center. If you go to their website, the jcch.com website, you'll be able to get more information about the exhibition and the temple tours. We're also doing presentations. We have a PowerPoint presentation that we do we're doing at temples and other organizations. On February 2nd, we're going to be doing a presentation at the Waialua Honganji, and it is sponsored by the North Shore Chamber of Commerce. It'll be at 6 o'clock. And we're expecting to have a really good time of being able to see the overview of Japanese Buddhist temples in Hawaii, but also to be able to take a really close look at the Waialua Honganji itself. There are some remarkable stories that we heard about a variety of objects that we were looking at, temple bells, statues, paintings. We were particularly interested in things that were made in Hawaii or had some kind of a local connection, which would distinguish it from what you would see in Japan. At the Kona Honganji on the Big Island, there is a statue. The main image of Amida Buddha is carved from a piece of sandalwood that was obtained from the Kealakekua Ranch above Kona. And this sandalwood was sent to Japan in 1932 to be carved by a Tendai priest in the traditional way, in which he would take his chisel and make one cut and then bow 3 times, make another cut, bow 3 times. And he went through this arduous process and finally completed this Amida statue, painted it with this beautiful gold lace pattern of the robes of Amida onto it, and was ready to send it back to Hawaii, and it cracked right down the front of the bottom skirt area, and he said, well, this will not do, and so he asked for another piece of sandalwood, which they sent. He went through the same arduous process of carving the statue. This time it didn't crack, and so he sent it back to the Kono Honganji, where you can see it today as their main image. But what we didn't know was that this first Buddhist statue, sandalwood statue, that developed a crack, was in the possession of a local family here in Honolulu. And that story emerged as we were organizing the exhibition. And a member of the family offered to loan it for the exhibition. So you can now go to the exhibition and see this Amida statue carved out of local Big Island sandalwood with the crack in it. It's been sort of repaired, but the crack is very obvious, and so you know, you can go really close and see not only the crack but the wonderful detail of the carving and the decoration on this statue. The book is available at the usual outlets like Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, and can also be ordered directly from the University of Hawaii Press, which is the publisher of the book. We made an arrangement with the University of Hawaii Press to allow temples to buy the book at discount so that they can resell the book and make a little profit, and that would help in their fundraising or in their finances. So these temples are part of our history, not only our religious history, but also our community history, family history. Now, because most of the temples, especially the ones in rural areas like here in Waialua, were established as part of sugar plantations. And so they proliferated as sugar plantations developed. Sugar plantations brought over many Japanese immigrant laborers. They lived in communities around the plantation and established their temples. And then as the plantations went out of business, then the people left and the temples remained, but basically without a congregation. So it's really a part not only of our religious history, but really our plantation sugar history and our community history. And so they remain as important artifacts of our history. And so it would be nice, but it's very difficult. But it would be nice if we or they would be able to somehow preserve these wonderful, lovely buildings. Thank you.